No one is coming. Build the inner parent, warrior, and mentor you always needed. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. The castle you waited in was made of mist. You stood at its highest tower, eyes scanning the horizon for a figure, wise, strong, loving, riding toward you. Someone who would finally make it better. Who would understand without explanation. Fix what was broken. Fill what was hollow. But the horizon remained empty. The drawbridge never lowered. And the years passed. This book is for that moment. The moment you stop waiting. Not in bitterness, but in awakening. It's a truth few are taught, and even fewer are ready to embrace. No one is coming. Not the parent you longed for. Not the partner who completes every corner of you. Not the mentor with the perfect plan. But what if the absence itself is an invitation? Inside you is a council waiting to be seated, the inner parent who soothes and structures, the inner warrior who acts and protects, the inner mentor who sees and guides. They are not fantasies. They are faculties. And they are waiting to be activated. Dr. Maya Angelou once said, I can be changed by what happens to me. But I refuse to be reduced by it. This is the heartbeat of inner leadership, not the denial of pain, but the refusal to be defined by it. This book is not about rescue. It's about return. Not to the child who hoped for someone else to come, but to the adult who now chooses to arrive. Welcome home. Chapter 1. The Quiet Realization. It often comes in the quiet, not the chaos. Not in the screaming breakup, not in the debt notice, not even in the funeral pew. It comes later, when the noise settles. When the phone stays silent. When the door doesn't open. When no one asks how you're holding up. That's when it sinks in. No one is coming. It's a realization that first feels like a betrayal. Of expectations. Of fairness. Of every story where the hero is found just in time. It's the moment you stop looking out the window and start staring into the mirror, not with vanity, but with a kind of grief. Because the cavalry you imagined is not on its way. No letter. No map. No magical timing. Just you, blinking under the weight of your own life. This moment is not a tragedy. It is a threshold. There is a type of silence that is an absence, its invitation. Beneath the stillness is a voice, not from above or beyond, but from within. Faint at first, like a whisper down a long hallway. But persistent. It does not offer rescue. It offers responsibility. And within that responsibility, something fierce begins to flicker. Because to realize no one is coming, is also to realize you are here. The one who feels the ache. The one who knows the story. The one who can begin. The one who can rise. This is where your true becoming begins. Many never reach this point. They numb it. Medicate it. Perform around it. They keep auditioning for love that won't arrive, validation that won't stick, mentorship that was never earned. They wait, not realizing waiting is just a softer word for disappearing. But those who stop waiting begin to work. They discover an untapped terrain within themselves, voices they never knew they had. A parent who knows how to soothe, without scolding. A warrior who moves without needing permission. A mentor who holds vision, even when the present is unclear. These inner voices are not delusions. They are latent capacities. As real as bones. And the great task of adulthood is not acquiring more from the world, but recovering these exiled parts within. We do not heal by finding someone to become what we missed. We heal by becoming it ourselves. This chapter is the initiation. Not into suffering, but into sovereignty. The truth is hard, yes. But it is also holy. It breaks what needs breaking, the illusion of rescue. And once that breaks, we are free to build. Not as victims. Not as orphans. But as architects. Your pain isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that you feel deeply, that you were born for something more than endurance. The ache is a messenger, not a sentence. And if you follow it inward, you'll find the tools you thought only others possessed. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming present. Because the one you've been waiting for, through the heartbreak, through the burnout, through the ache to be seen, has always been closer than you imagined. You don't need to be rescued. You need to be remembered. And this book is the remembering. Welcome to the edge of the old story. The next one begins now. The realization that no one is coming is not abandonment, it's an invitation. Waiting for external rescue delays internal leadership. Inner transformation begins the moment you stop outsourcing your power. Where in your life are you still waiting to be rescued? Today, pause in a quiet moment and whisper aloud, I am here now. Let that sentence land in your body. Let it begin something. Chapter 2: The Collapse of the Myth. Every culture tells stories about the one who comes to save us. The prince who climbs the tower. The guide who hands us the map. The parent who finally sees. The lover who makes us whole. These myths live deep in our marrow. Not just as fantasies, but as frameworks. They shape how we wait, how we ache, how we expect life to unfold. We don't call them myths. We call them someday. Someday I'll meet someone who gets me. Someday my family will understand. Someday the opportunity will knock, and everything will change. But someday never shows up on time. And sometimes it doesn't show up at all. The collapse doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. The partner you thought would complete you turns out to be just as lost. The parent you hoped would finally apologize still lives inside their denial. The mentor you admired reveals their cracks. And bit by bit, the stories begin to unravel. At first, you try harder. If you're better, more agreeable, more impressive, more available, maybe the myth will redeem itself. Maybe the cavalry is just delayed. Maybe the answer is still coming. But eventually, even the most faithful start to see the truth. No one is coming, not because you're unworthy, but because the myth was never real to begin with. It's not your failure. It's the frame that failed you. The belief that someone outside of you would complete the inside of you was always a setup. Wholeness isn't handed over. It's reclaimed. The collapse of the myth is not the end of hope. It's the beginning of clarity. It's what happens when your loyalty to fantasy finally bows to your hunger for freedom. You stop hoping to be chosen and start choosing yourself. There is grief here. Honor it. Mourn the dream. Let the ache come. Because buried in that grief is the seed of your power. The realization that no one can make the climb for you is not defeat. It's the invitation to grow the legs that carry you upward. Rescue is seductive. It lets you delay. It lets you blame. It gives you someone to wait on, something to yearn for. But yearning keeps you small. It locks your life in limbo. When the myth collapses, so does the excuse. That's terrifying. But it's also beautiful. Because now, finally, you are free to begin. You are no longer the character waiting in the background of your own story. You are the one who walks into the fire. Who writes the ending. Who stops handing the pen to someone else. The collapse is sacred. It clears the path. It dismantles the lies so you can build the truth. And the truth is this: no one else is coming because you were never meant to be saved. You were meant to rise. The stories you were given taught you to wait. But the story you write from here will teach you to act. No one is coming. And maybe that's not the tragedy. Maybe that's the doorway. Maybe that's the first breath of a new life, yours. Cultural myths of rescue can unconsciously shape how we wait for external solutions. The collapse of the rescue fantasy is painful, but necessary for personal sovereignty. Letting go of someday allows you to choose yourself now. What old story are you still hoping will redeem itself? Write down one myth you've outgrown. Burn it, tear it, bury it, ritualize your release. Let it go. Chapter 3: The Inner Council. Once the myth collapses, there is a silence. Not emptiness, possibility. This silence is not blank. It's fertile. A quiet hum begins to rise from within, like ancient drums beneath the surface. Something stirs. Something waits. Because while no one may be coming from the outside, something is awakening on the inside. It does not arrive fully formed. It doesn't wear armor or robes. It doesn't speak in thunder. But it begins to appear, in the stillness, in the ache, in the questions you no longer run from. There is not one voice. There are three. The inner parent is the first to emerge. Not to fix, but to witness. This presence doesn't shame your struggle or rush your process. It offers steadiness, not solutions. It shows up when you fall apart and says it's okay. I've got you now. It knows what you were missing and offers it without resentment. It holds your hand as you learn to hold your own. Next, the inner warrior rises, not to fight others, but to fight for you. This is not bravado. This is not rage. This is sacred resolve. It's the part of you that says, no more. No more shrinking. No more betrayal of self. It doesn't wait for conditions to improve. It moves. It acts. It protects the parts of you that once felt helpless. Last, the inner mentor steps forward. Quiet, steady, wise. Not loud, but unmistakable. This voice doesn't push. It invites. It sees the version of you you're becoming and holds that vision with unshakable belief. It doesn't erase your doubt, but it doesn't let you drown in it either. It says, I know the way. Walk with me. Together, these three form your inner council. They are not imaginary. They are internal. Archetypes of your own capacity, nurture, courage, wisdom. They have always been within you, only waiting for permission to lead. Think of them not as roles to perform, but as relationships to develop. The parent is not perfect love, but consistent presence. The warrior is not relentless aggression, but conscious power. The mentor is not flawless certainty, but grounded clarity. They speak when you slow down enough to listen. They rise when you create space for them to be heard. And the more you engage them, the more they become second nature. Not because you pretend, but because you remember. This is the beginning of inner leadership. Not the leadership that dominates others, but the kind that refuses to abandon the self. It is not about control, it is about communion. Sitting at your own inner table, listening deeply, moving from alignment. Some call this intuition. Others, integration. But in truth, it's a reunion. You are not a single self. You are a council. And the more fractured you feel, the more these voices are needed, not to fix you, but to unify you. They do not erase pain, but they guide you through it. They do not promise ease, but they offer strength. They do not replace connection, but they anchor it. Because once you belong to yourself, you stop begging the world to give you what you've already received. You don't need to wait for a savior. You need to seat your counsel. And once you do, the world around you begins to shift, not because it changed, but because you did. The inner council consists of three vital voices: the parent, the warrior, and the mentor. These are not fantasies, but internal faculties, each serving a purpose. Learning to hear and trust them is the foundation of inner leadership. Which of the three voices feels most familiar to you, and which feels furthest away? Find a quiet moment today. Ask inwardly, which part of me wants to speak right now? Then listen. Write what you hear. Chapter 4, Building the Inner Parent, Part 1. Before discipline, before boundaries, before structure, there must be safety. The inner parent doesn't begin with correction. It begins with presence. With the kind of gaze that doesn't flinch when you're falling apart. With the kind of voice that doesn't rush to solve but simply says, I'm here. Many never had that. Not really. Maybe there were people who fed you, clothed you, even loved you. But did anyone sit beside your shame without trying to silence it? Did anyone let you cry without shrinking from the sound? Did anyone teach you that your needs weren't a burden? If the answer is no, the body remembers. And that's where the inner parent begins, not with perfection, but with reparation. Imagine a small child showing up at your doorstep, hungry, tired, afraid. You would never scold that child for needing comfort. You wouldn't demand they toughen up before earning a warm meal. You'd wrap them in a blanket. You'd soften your tone. You'd make space. Now realize, that child is still you. The inner parent enters when you begin to meet yourself with that same compassion. When you stop weaponizing shame as motivation. When you recognize that structure built on punishment will collapse under pressure, but structure built on care will hold. This is not indulgence. It's intelligence. The nervous system cannot learn in an environment of threat. Only when the body feels safe can the mind begin to reorganize. So the inner parent's first job is to create that safety, not by removing all discomfort, but by providing consistent presence in the midst of it. You do this in small, sacred ways. You feed yourself when it would be easier not to. You rest when your worth feels tied to productivity. You say no, even when guilt claws at the door. You speak to yourself, not with criticism, but with steadiness. I see you. I'm not leaving. We're okay. Over time, these acts accumulate. Not as grand gestures, but as micro moments of repair. And slowly, your inner world begins to rewire. The self that once panicked in silence starts to trust that someone is listening now. That someone is you. The inner parent does not fix all things. But they show up for all things. They do not always know what to do, but their presence becomes the answer. They hold the container. They keep the promise, you will not be abandoned again. Asterisk. And in that promise, something ancient begins to exhale. The part of you that believed you had to earn rest finally lies down. The part of you that thought needs were dangerous starts to speak. The part of you that feared your own fragility begins to soften. You are not weak for needing care. You are wise for learning to give it. This is the foundation. Before you build anything else, build this, a place within yourself where all your parts are allowed to land. Not because they're fixed, but because they belong. The inner parent doesn't wait for worthiness. They bring the worth with them. And they stay. The inner parent creates safety first, through presence, not perfection. Reparenting begins by offering yourself the care you once lacked. Consistent, compassionate actions rebuild trust within your inner world. What would it look like to treat your needs as valid instead of inconvenient? Tonight, do one nourishing thing just for yourself. Prepare a meal, take a bath, lie down early, and whisper, asterisk. You deserve this. Chapter 5, Building the Inner Parent, Part 2. Love without limits sounds poetic, but the truth is, love needs edges. The inner parent does not only soothe. They shape. They do not just say, asterisk. I'm here. Asterisk, they also say, asterisk. This is what we do now. Not as punishment, but as protection. Not to control, but to contain. Structure is how love stays steady. It's easy to confuse structure with strictness. Rules without relationship breed rebellion, not resilience. But the inner parent is different. Their boundaries are not about obedience, they're about belonging. They say, asterisk, this life matters enough to be held in rhythm. And rhythm is what begins to heal what chaos once broke. The child in you may have learned to earn safety through performance, being quiet, being good, being invisible. So structure may feel like pressure. Like something you must get right to be loved. But real structure, born from the inner parent, says the opposite. You are loved, therefore I will give this form. It begins with the basics. Eating when you're hungry, not when it's convenient. Sleeping when you're tired, not when you've earned it. Saying no when something harms, even if it disappoints others. These are not luxuries. They are reparenting rituals. They teach the body it is no longer in exile. Boundaries, too, are acts of inner parenting. Not the kind that wall off intimacy, but the kind that preserve it. Boundaries say, this is how I stay safe enough to stay connected. Asterisk, they draw the line between what you carry and what you release. The inner parent is not rigid but rooted. They don't bend to please, they flex to protect. They know that saying yes to everything is not compassion. It's collapse. So they begin to prune. Not from harshness, but from discernment. They remove the relationships that drain, the habits that numb, the patterns that sabotage. And in their place, they plant habits of devotion. Habits that say, this is a life I care for. That care becomes culture. The small, repeated ways you tend to yourself become the unspoken rules your nervous system learns to follow. And over time, you stop abandoning yourself to meet the world. You begin to meet yourself first, and let the world rise to that standard. This is what the inner parent teaches, that discipline is not punishment. It is devotion. That rest is not laziness. It is repair. That saying no is not rejection. It is remembrance of who you are and what you're not willing to lose again. Many chase transformation without foundation. They try to grow while skipping the step of learning how to stay. But without the inner parent, growth turns frantic. It becomes escape dressed up as evolution. The inner parent slows that down. They ask, is this sustainable? They remind you that a life worth living is not built in a sprint, but in the slow, loving repetition of care. They do not just whisper, I love you. They prove it in the calendar, in the meals, in the boundaries, in the rest. This is how reparenting becomes reality. Not through grand declarations, but through daily demonstrations. Through the quiet power of showing up again and again for the one person who will never leave you, yourself. The inner parent sets structure not from control, but from care. Boundaries, routines, and rituals are expressions of love, not restriction. Reparenting becomes real through repeated, embodied acts of devotion. What is one area of your life where structure would feel like care, not control? Choose one supportive ritual, a bedtime, a morning stretch, a tech-free meal, and commit to it daily for 1 week. Let it be an act of love. Chapter 6: Igniting the Inner Warrior, Part 1. There is a moment when compassion must make room for fire. Not the fire that scorches, but the fire that saves. Not fury turned outward, but strength turned inward. Not chaos, but clarity in motion. The inner warrior lives in this fire. They do not enter your life as a scream. They enter as a stance. A shift in posture. A refusal to keep shrinking into spaces that no longer fit. They are not loud, but they are unmistakable. When they rise, you know it. It often begins with a quiet no, one you didn't know you had the right to say. No, I won't stay silent. No, I won't prove my worth to be chosen. No, I won't abandon myself for approval. And then the warrior speaks, Stand up. This life is worth defending. This is not the version of strength the world sells, domination, armor, detachment. The inner warrior does not fight to win. They fight to protect. And what they protect most is your right to be whole. You may have learned that being soft meant being weak. That to survive, you had to tolerate, appease, endure. But endurance without boundaries becomes erosion. You were not made to disappear. The inner warrior remembers this. They remind you that your voice matters, even if it trembles. That your body has instincts, even if you were taught to override them. That your time, your energy, your presence are sacred, and you don't owe them to anyone who treats them like currency. The inner warrior is the part of you that chooses alignment over accommodation. They say, we're not doing this anymore. Not because you're angry, but because you're awake. They don't ask permission to act. They don't wait for everything to be perfect. They move. Especially when it's hard. Especially when doubt hovers. Especially when the old self tries to sabotage the new one. Action, to the warrior, is not reckless, it's redemptive. It breaks the spell of paralysis. It teaches the body that it's not helpless. Every time you do the thing you feared would destroy you, say the truth, walk away, ask for what you need, you send a signal to yourself, I am not abandoned. I am here, and I am strong. Strength, in this context, is sacred. It doesn't come from pretending you have no needs. It comes from protecting them. Not demanding the world make room for you, but making room for yourself, unapologetically. There will be resistance. The old patterns will whisper, be small. Don't stir the waters. You're too much. You'll be left. But the warrior counters, let them leave. Let them misunderstand. You are not here to live half a life. And as you begin to trust this voice, your backbone grows. Not rigid but rooted. Not brittle, but unbreakable. You stop flinching at your own truth. You stop apologizing for having needs. You stop mistaking silence for peace. You learn to stand. You learn to act. You learn to fight, not against the world, but for your own becoming. The inner warrior isn't summoned by perfection. They're summoned by purpose. They rise when you decide that your life, your healing, your truth is worth protecting. And they stay when you prove it, not just in thought, but in deed. This is not rebellion. This is reclamation. The flame is yours now. The inner warrior protects your truth, boundaries, and becoming. Strength is not suppression, it's sacred self-honoring. Action breaks the cycle of internal abandonment and reclaims power. Where in your life are you mistaking silence for safety? Name one place where you've been shrinking. Do one bold, loving act today that reclaims that space, no matter how small. Chapter 7, Igniting the Inner Warrior, Part 2. The inner warrior is not a phase. It is a practice. It must be chosen again and again, not in moments of triumph, but in moments of testing. Not just when courage is easy, but when fear feels like gravity. There's a myth that bravery means not feeling afraid. But the truth is, the warrior feels everything. The pulse of doubt. The tug of old habits. The tremble just before the leap. What sets them apart isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to bow to it. Fear says, wait until it's safe. The warrior says, move anyway. This kind of courage is built through repetition. Every time you speak the truth you once swallowed, every time you walk away from what dishonors you, every time you choose discomfort over self-abandonment, you train the warrior to stay. Courage is a muscle, not a mood. And like all muscles, it strengthens under pressure. But only if you keep showing up. Not for applause. Not for perfection. But for alignment. Because there are battles only you can fight. The battle to unlearn compliance as a survival strategy. The battle to say no without guilt. The battle to take up space without apology. The battle to act before you're fully ready. These are not external wars. They are sacred inner rebellions. Not against people, but against patterns. Patterns that were once necessary for survival, but are now incompatible with your becoming. The inner warrior draws their sword not to harm, but to cut through illusion. To sever the ties between who you were and who you are choosing to be. That sword may look like a firm boundary. A difficult conversation. A long overdue exit. A truth spoken into silence. You don't need to explain your edge to those who benefit from your erosion. You don't need permission to protect your peace. The warrior knows this. And they help you remember it when the world tries to make you forget. But power without direction is just noise. So the inner warrior doesn't just act, they act with purpose. They are discerning. They know that not every conflict is worth entering. Not every provocation requires your energy. Their motto is not, fight everything. It's fight for what matters. And most often, what matters is you. There will be backlash. People who like the version of you who tolerated everything may resist the version who no longer does. That's not your failure. That's their discomfort meeting your growth. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not apologize for the space you've reclaimed. The inner warrior teaches that you are not too much. You are not dramatic. You are not hard to love. You are simply no longer available for disrespect dressed as normalcy. Let that standard rise. The inner warrior does not promise ease, but they offer integrity. The kind of deep, soul-settling integrity that comes from living in alignment with your values, even when no one is watching. Especially then. And the more you live from that place, the more unshakable you become. Not invincible, but unwavering. Because you are no longer asking the world for permission to exist. You are giving it to yourself. You are no longer outsourcing your worth. You are defending it. The fire hasn't faded. It's just waiting for your signal. Choose it again. And again. And again. The inner warrior is strengthened through repeated, aligned action in the face of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but movement despite it. Acting from purpose, not provocation, protects your energy and honors your growth. Where in your life have you been negotiating your worth for peace? Today, take one aligned action, speak a boundary, tell a truth, or say no. Let your warrior lead. Chapter 8, Awakening the Inner Mentor Part 1. There is a voice that speaks beneath the noise. It doesn't shout. It doesn't clamor for attention. It doesn't argue with fear or try to overpower doubt. It simply waits, calm, steady, present. This is the inner mentor. Where the parent comforts and the warrior protects, the mentor guides. They are the voice of deep vision, the keeper of your potential, the one who sees the path when you are lost in the thicket of your own uncertainty. The mentor doesn't react. They respond. They don't tell you what to do, they help you remember what you already know. You've heard this voice before. In the quiet certainty after a hard decision. In the strange peace that settles when you finally let go of what was never yours. In the small whisper that says, there's something more for you than this. The problem is not that the mentor isn't speaking. It's that the world is loud. So loud that we confuse the opinions of others with truth. So loud that we mistake urgency for clarity. So loud that we outsource our direction, hoping someone else will map the road we were born to walk. But the inner mentor doesn't live in the noise. They live in the stillness underneath it. To hear them, you must turn inward. Not just with thought, but with intention. With patience. With trust. Because this voice does not flatter your ego. It speaks to your essence. It won't give you shortcuts. But it will show you the next right step. The inner mentor sees not just who you are, but who you're becoming. They remember what you forget. Your resilience. Your brilliance. Your buried longing. Your sacred rage. They carry the blueprint you keep trying to download from others. They hold it gently, like a lantern, waiting for you to ask. When you do, they don't hand you a 5-year plan. They offer something better, presence, perspective, and one small act of alignment. Because the mentor knows, transformation is not about speed. It's about direction. This part of you is forged in reflection, in honesty, in integrity. Not moral perfection, but inner coherence. The mentor isn't concerned with how it looks, they care about whether it's true. Whether your choices are congruent with who you say you are. Their wisdom is often uncomfortable. It may lead you away from what's familiar. It may cost you certain illusions. It may strip you of the applause you've grown attached to. But what it offers in return is priceless, peace that isn't performative. The inner mentor teaches you to stop chasing and start aligning. To stop reacting and start responding. To stop looking outside for a compass and begin listening to the one inside your chest. This is not about knowing everything. It's about trusting that you are capable of learning, adapting, and evolving. That you don't need to have all the answers to take the next step. You only need the courage to ask, what would the wisest part of me choose right now? Ask that question often. Sit with the answer. Even when it challenges you. Especially then. Because the mentor's job is not to comfort you, it's to call you forward. Not out of punishment, but out of possibility. And the one they are calling forward is you. The inner mentor is the voice of vision, wisdom, and alignment. This voice grows clearer in stillness, not noise. Transformation begins by trusting the next right step, not knowing the whole path. What noise in your life drowns out the voice of your inner wisdom? Today, sit in silence for 5 minutes. Ask inwardly, what is one small step I know I need to take? Then write it down. Chapter 9, Awakening the Inner Mentor, Part 2. The inner mentor doesn't rush. They understand that becoming takes time, not because you are slow, but because truth unfolds in layers. One season may be about shedding. Another, about stillness. Another, about stepping into something terrifying and new. The mentor honors them all. They are not concerned with your pace, they're concerned with your alignment. They care less about whether you've arrived and more about whether you're facing the right direction. They know there's no final destination, only deeper embodiment. The voice of the inner mentor often sounds like clarity you've heard before but didn't believe. It feels like déjà vu with direction. Like a steady hand on your back saying, yes, this way. Still, it's easy to confuse the mentor's voice with the voices of fear, ego, or urgency. They all live inside the same house, and sometimes they try on each other's tone. But the mentor doesn't beg. They don't catastrophize. They don't need you to prove anything. Their wisdom feels like quiet courage. That courage, when trusted, becomes clarity in motion. The inner mentor is not detached from your past. They are forged by it. They take every scar, every stumble, every skipped chapter, and weave it into wisdom. They don't ask you to pretend it didn't hurt. They ask what it taught you. They take what broke you and help you build with it. You do not become the mentor by having all the answers. You become the mentor by refusing to abandon yourself in the face of uncertainty. You show up with presence when perfection is impossible. You act with integrity when applause is absent. You lead with humility because you've walked the dark and found your own light. There comes a time when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "Who do I want to become?" That's the mentor's terrain. They are not reactive. They are responsive. They're not driven by external reward. They're anchored in internal congruence. They know that legacy isn't built in loud declarations, it's shaped by small, consistent decisions rooted in who you are. This is the voice you offer to your future self. The one who's watching from a few steps ahead, cheering for you to choose growth even when it costs comfort. And sometimes, the mentor's greatest gift is not advice, but vision. They see the person you're becoming when all you see is the mess you're in. They remind you that your circumstances are not your ceiling. That your doubt is not your destiny. That your fear is not the end of the road, it's the invitation to keep walking. You become the person you needed by listening to the voice that already believes in who you are becoming. No external mentor, no matter how wise, can give you that. They can reflect it. They can name it. But they cannot live it for you. That is your sacred work. And when you stop waiting for wisdom to come from above and start listening to the wisdom within, everything changes, not instantly, but deeply. You begin to walk differently. Speak differently. Choose differently. Because the one leading you now is not fear. It's not fantasy. It's not performance. It's the you who remembers. The you who sees. The you who knows. The inner mentor uses your past not as weight but as wisdom. Their voice is grounded, non-reactive, and rooted in vision. Becoming the mentor you needed means choosing alignment over approval. What would your future self thank you for doing today? Write a short letter from your inner mentor to your present self. Let it remind you of who you are becoming. Chapter 10: Integration. Power comes not from parts, but from their unity. The parent who comforts but never protects becomes enabling. The warrior who acts without vision becomes destructive. The mentor who sees but does not nurture becomes distant. Each inner voice is vital. But together, they form something stronger than their sum: coherence. Integration is not perfection. It's wholeness. It's when the inner parent, warrior, and mentor are no longer isolated responses to chaos, but a living counsel guiding you through the complexity of life with clarity and integrity. When a boundary is crossed, the parent soothes the wound, the warrior defends the line, and the mentor helps you understand what it means. When you're frozen in indecision, the mentor names the next step, the parent reminds you you're safe, and the warrior helps you move. When old patterns pull you back, the warrior holds firm, the parent whispers comfort, and the mentor casts the vision forward. You stop being a house divided against itself. You become a home. There will still be conflict. There will still be moments when one voice wants to run while another wants to stay. But the difference now is that you know how to listen. You know when it's the voice of fear and when it's the voice of wisdom. You know which voice needs to lead, and when. Integration is a relationship you cultivate, not a destination you arrive at. It happens in the pauses. In the quiet checking in. In the moment before reacting when you ask, which part of me is speaking? And who do I want to respond? There is no formula, only practice. Some days, the warrior must take the lead and say the hard thing. Other days, the parent must cancel the meeting and take you to bed. Some days, the mentor must pull you out of your spiral and remind you, this is not the end of the story. To live from this counsel is to walk through the world differently. Less fragmented. Less fragile. Not because pain disappears, but because you are no longer facing it alone. You carry your own reinforcements now. When people see you, they may not know what changed. But they'll feel it. The steadiness in your yes. The finality in your no. The quiet authority that doesn't need to prove, because it has nothing to hide. The kind of presence that comes from someone who knows they are no longer at war with themselves. Integration doesn't mean you never fall apart. It means you know how to gather yourself when you do. It means that when you feel small, your parent will sit beside you. When you feel lost, your mentor will light the way. And when you feel afraid, your warrior will take your hand and say, "We move." This is the return. Not to a former self, but to your full self. Not to innocence, but to power. Not to dependency, but to dignity. Not to waiting, but to walking. Integration isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It shows itself in the way you live, how you speak to yourself, how you navigate the hard moments, how you choose what to carry and what to release. And most of all, it reveals itself in how you show up. Not for performance. Not for praise. But for presence. Because you've stopped outsourcing your wholeness. You've come home to your counsel. And they're ready to lead. Integration is the harmony of the parent, warrior, and mentor guiding in unison. Each voice supports the others, creating internal stability and clarity. True power arises when you are no longer divided within. Which part of your inner counsel do you need to trust more right now? In a moment of tension today, pause. Ask which voice do I need to lead me in this? Then let that voice speak, and follow its guidance. Chapter 11, Arrival. There is no ceremony. No parade. No angel chorus. Just you. Awake. A little quieter inside. A little taller. This is what arrival feels like, not the end of struggle, but the beginning of self-trust. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of power in the midst of it. You are here. Not the version of you who begged to be saved. Not the one who shapeshifted to be accepted. Not the one who waited for someone else to name your worth. The you who rose. The you who sat in the ashes and built a hearth. The you who listened inward, when the world told you to keep performing. The you who heard the silence, and didn't flinch. No one came. And that turned out to be your liberation. Because in their absence, you made room for something more enduring than rescue. You cultivated the parts of yourself no one could give you and no one can take away. You parented the parts of you that were never soothed. You fought for the self you used to abandon. You mentored the younger you who didn't know how to believe. And now you lead yourself. Not with rigid certainty, but with grounded presence. Not with armor, but with depth. You walk through the world as someone who knows what they carry. Someone who doesn't shrink to be chosen. Someone who is no longer waiting to arrive, because they already have. This is the paradox of healing. You spend years searching for someone to give you what you lacked, only to discover you are the one you were looking for. The one who could hold the pain without letting it define you. The one who could make choices from clarity, not wounding. The one who could rewrite the ending, not by erasing the past, but by transcending it. You are no longer performing wholeness. You are embodying it. That doesn't mean you never wobble. It means you no longer shame yourself when you do. It means you know how to return, not to perfection, but to presence. You don't need a finish line to be proud. You don't need everyone to understand to be steady. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. Power now is not something you chase. It's something you inhabit. And with it comes responsibility, not to be flawless, but to be faithful to yourself. To what you know. To what you've learned in the long night of your becoming. The world may not celebrate this arrival. It may not validate the quiet work you've done. But you will feel it. In the way your no comes quicker. In the way your yes feels cleaner. In the way your presence lands in a room, not to impress but to root. You are no longer seeking a savior. You are no longer mistaking survival for peace. You are no longer waiting for someone to see you before you allow yourself to be seen. You are home. Not in a place. In a person. You. This is not the end. It is the beginning of a life shaped by self-leadership, guided by inner wisdom, anchored in worth that doesn't wobble when the wind blows. The parent will still speak. The warrior will still rise. The mentor will still guide. But now they are no longer fragments. They are one voice, harmonized through you. You've stopped hoping someone else will come. Because you came. And you are enough. Arrival is not the end of the journey, but the embodiment of your inner leadership. You've become the parent, warrior, and mentor you once longed for. Self-trust replaces waiting, and presence replaces performance. What part of yourself have you finally come home to? Stand in front of a mirror today. Look into your own eyes and say aloud, "You came. And I'm proud of you." Let it land. Let it be true. Take care and be well.